They say faith sets you free. But what if it's the opposite? What if what you call spiritual truth is actually a symptom, a collective symptom, an invisible code that controls you without you even realizing it? A comfort that comes at a high price, your freedom. Freud dared to say it. He called religion a disorder. He challenged centuries of beliefs with one simple question: is God real or just a psychological need? In this video, we dive into some of the most dangerous ideas in psychoanalysis, and you might walk away with a question that never leaves you. Is religion a collective disorder? Was Freud right? Get ready. Discomfort might be the first sign of awakening. Sigmund Freud wasn't just the founder of psychoanalysis. He was a revolutionary thinker who turned human understanding on its head. Born in 1856 in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, he grew up surrounded by strong religious traditions. But his restless, analytical mind started questioning dogmas and beliefs early on. Throughout his career, he explored the mysteries of the unconscious, challenging everything we thought we knew about the mind and human behavior. To Freud, the deepest truths about humanity weren't found in religion, but hidden in the dark corners of the psyche. Although he was raised in a Jewish family, Freud never followed his parents' faith. He didn't see religion as some divine revelation, but rather as a reflection of psychological needs. His work showed that faith doesn't come from reason. It comes from an unconscious desire for safety and order. That view made him one of the most controversial figures in the history of psychology because he was clear. Religion isn't an objective truth. It's a human invention designed to cope with fear, uncertainty, and death. Freud didn't just question religion, he broke it apart. His research suggested that religious dogmas act like psychological defense mechanisms, shielding people from existential anxiety. In works like The Future of an Illusion, he argued that faith was a way to avoid the distress that comes with true freedom, keeping humanity locked in a kind of psychological childhood. But here's the real question: does religion actually block human maturity? Or is there something deeper going on? Freud didn't see religion as just a set of beliefs. It was to him a psychological reflection of the human mind. In his view, God wasn't some supreme being, but a projection of the unconscious, an idealized father figure offering comfort and protection in the face of human fragility. Just like a child looks to their parents for guidance and safety, the believer transfers that same emotional need to a divine figure. So faith doesn't come from logic or reason. It grows out of emotional dependency, acting like a mental anchor in a chaotic and uncertain world. In The Future of an Illusion, Freud argues that belief in God is built the same way childhood myths are. From a young age, we're taught to see the divine as a protective authority figure, someone who punishes wrongdoing and rewards goodness. It's a continuation of childhood, where parental figures set the rules and shape behavior. But Freud warns this setup can be dangerous. When morality is imposed from the outside in, the person doesn't develop real critical thinking. They just obey without ever asking why. This Freudian idea sparked a lot of debate. Carl Jung, for instance, disagreed with Freud and saw God as a universal archetype, a necessary symbol for psychological balance. To Jung, spirituality could be a path to self-awareness, but for Freud, it was just a way to escape reality. And the big question still stands: is faith a foundation for personal growth, or just a defense mechanism keeping us locked in a comfortable illusion? Freud went beyond just a philosophical or psychological critique of religion. He actually compared it to a kind of collective mental disorder. In Civilization and its Discontents, he argued that religion functions a lot like obsessive-compulsive disorder. Rigid rules and repetitive rituals are created to ease anxiety. Just like someone with OCD feels the need to compulsively wash their hands or follow certain patterns to prevent imagined disasters, humanity invented religious rituals to soothe its fear of the unknown. Prayers, fasting, taboos, and sacred ceremonies, Freud said, weren't signs of a higher truth. They were symptoms of a shared compulsion. That perspective raises a tough question. Does religion really connect us to the divine, or does it just suppress our deepest instincts? Freud believed faith played a double role. On one hand, it enforced a collective morality, but on the other, it created an endless internal struggle. The religious person doesn't stop feeling anger, desire, or ambition. They're just forced to suppress those feelings, which leads to guilt and repression. Sin, in Freud's view, wasn't about offending a real God. It was a social tool to keep certain behaviors in check. This view sparked intense reactions from both theologians and psychologists. For Freud, the cost of faith was steep. Religion lays down strict rules, but doesn't teach people how to handle their natural impulses. Nietzsche took it even further, saying that religious dogmas cripple human vitality, preventing people from fully embracing their freedom. So here's the big question. Does religion really keep our darker side in check, or does it stop us from becoming who we truly are? For Freud, religion doesn't just influence human behavior. It actually shapes the very structure of the mind. It acts like an invisible mechanism that governs not only what we do, but also what we think, feel, and fear. The real danger lies in that subtle influence. When someone internalizes religious dogma as absolute truth, they lose the ability to question their own beliefs. From this point of view, faith isn't just emotional comfort. It's a powerful form of mental self-censorship. Freud noticed that the stricter the moral code of a religion, the deeper the fear of sin, punishment, and divine disapproval becomes rooted in the psyche. That kind of control has a deep impact on identity formation. When morality is dictated by some unquestionable higher authority, personal ethics stop evolving. Instead of reflecting on what's fair or virtuous through experience and reason, people simply follow orders. Viktor Frankl, as a counterpoint, saw faith as a foundation for meaning, especially in extreme circumstances. But Freud saw it as a trap. The more someone relies on external structures to feel safe, the less they grow into a free and autonomous human being. At this point, Freud's critique goes beyond skepticism. It digs into something deeper. Religion doesn't just offer emotional security, it charges a heavy price for it, your inner freedom. The promise of heaven might cost you your ability to think freely. The threat of hell can smother curiosity and spontaneity. In this light, religion isn't just a belief. It's an invisible system of control, as powerful as any political or legal structure, only this one is enforced by faith and fueled by fear. One of Freud's most powerful critiques was the idea that religion keeps humanity stuck in a state of psychological immaturity. Instead of facing the uncertainty and complexity of existence head-on, people cling to the comforting idea that there's a higher plan, a greater purpose, someone watching over everything. Freud compared this to a child's dependency on their parents. To him, God is a symbolic extension of that protective figure, and faith is an unconscious refusal to grow up and take full responsibility for one's own freedom. This idea forces us to ask, do people prefer to obey rather than question because deep down, growing up actually hurts? Taking ownership of your life without leaning on divine crutches means carrying the full weight of freedom. No promises of heaven, no guarantees of salvation. Jean-Paul Sartre, when talking about existentialism, reached a similar point. When there's no God telling you what's right or wrong, everything falls on your shoulders. Freedom becomes a terrifying burden. But Freud goes even further. He suggests that the entire structure of faith was built to spare us from that burden, even if it costs us our autonomy. So Freud's vision of maturity is radical. It's not about swapping one belief system for another. It's about facing reality without a mask. That takes courage, self-awareness, and the willingness to live in a world where meaning isn't handed to you. You have to create it. In Freud's view, as long as we rely on a heavenly Father to validate our values, we'll never truly grow up. In this light, faith doesn't elevate us, it protects us. But too much protection, as we all know, can also suffocate. If we let go of religion, like Freud suggests, what's left? It's an uncomfortable question, but an essential one. Freud's critique doesn't end with tearing down faith. It throws us into uncharted territory, with no maps, no divine compass. For Freud, living without religion isn't just possible, it's necessary for true psychological growth. But he didn't ignore the emptiness that might come with that. Without the promise of a higher plan, we're left staring at an indifferent universe, where no one else can take responsibility for our existence. That lack of a pre-made purpose can definitely cause anxiety. But it also makes room for something Freud saw as vital: consciously building your own sense of meaning. Instead of accepting ready-made truths, the individual is invited to think, choose, and create their own values. In this, Freud aligns, though through a different path, with Albert Camus, who saw the absurd not as an end, but as a starting point for living an authentic life. The end of religious illusion doesn't have to be a breakdown. It could be the beginning of a kind of freedom we've never fully tasted. But that kind of freedom doesn't come without emotional weight. Letting go of religion means giving up some very comforting ideas: that justice will prevail in the end, that pain has a reason, that destiny is already written. It's a leap into the unknown. But for Freud, that leap is exactly what makes us truly human. Maturity isn't about seeking comfort. It's about accepting life's complexity as it is. So maybe the real question isn't whether we can live without religion, but whether we can live fully awake while still depending on it. Freud never aimed to replace religion with another belief system. His proposal was harsher, more demanding: to face reality with no filters, no guarantees, and no comforting doctrines. To him, true freedom can only be achieved when a person fully realizes they're alone in shaping their own life. There's no heaven waiting, no hell threatening, just choices, consequences, and full responsibility for our existence. Harsh as it may sound, this view holds incredible power. It pulls us out of spiritual childhood and pushes us toward existential maturity. But that kind of freedom comes with an emotional cost that most people aren't willing to pay. Religion offers shelter, structure, meaning. Letting it go is like releasing the hand of a protective parent during a storm. Still, Freud insisted that growth demands that break. Only when we stop clinging to pre-made meaning can we begin to create for ourselves something truly our own. That's the Freudian paradox. By giving up the security of faith, we gain the potential to become truly free, not driven by fear, not guided by guilt, but led by conscious awareness. The challenge Freud leaves us with is simple, but heavy. Would you rather live with a comforting illusion or a truth that sets you free? That's not just a rational question. It's a life decision. Living with faith might feel easier, safer, but living with clarity, even if it's harder, might be the first real step toward an authentic life. In the end, maybe the greatest miracle isn't believing, but having the courage to see the world without filters and still choose to move forward. That's the kind of freedom Freud offered, and it's also his boldest challenge. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you is ready to question what's always been seen as untouchable. Freud didn't hand you answers, he handed you a mirror. And now the question is staring back at you. Are you willing to give up the safety of faith, to fully embrace the responsibility of freedom? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with Freud? Or do you believe religion still has an essential role in our human journey? Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. If this reflection moved something in you, hit the like button. It shows us that this kind of content matters and needs to keep going. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the bell, because here we don't offer easy comfort. We challenge, we question, we grow. And remember, critical thinking is the highest form of freedom you can claim. But before you go, be honest with yourself. If all of this made sense to you, do you really believe that heaven is the final reward? Because maybe, just maybe, what they promised you as paradise has always been the smartest prison ever built. Click the suggested video on your screen and uncover the dark truth behind the promise of heaven. You'll never look at it the same way again. See you in the next video. Until then, keep thinking and keep daring.